program now. My name's Anna Julia McVeigh. I work for the Nature Positive Initiative as the head of strategic engagement. Very happy to welcome you all here this evening. Please take your seats. Do I get one too? Please take your seats. We're going to begin right now. Thank you.
Well, you're not going to introduce me, are you? You're going to do a quick introduction. No, I'm happy to introduce myself. What do you do? You own it.
Thank you for taking your seats. We're going to begin. Okay, everyone, please quieten down. Thank you. Please take your seats. I know it's a very exciting evening. We're very happy to have you. We'd like to make a start now. Thank you. Okay. Without further ado, I would love to welcome Becky Anderson to begin the evening.
Do you know what I love? This room feels like everybody wants to be here. Everybody knows each other. Everybody's heavily invested. I've done quite a lot of these over the years. I was here 6 years ago, loved it. And I do a lot of these during the year. And honestly, this room feels so engaged. So wonderful to be back. And thank you very much for having me. I'm Becky Anderson from CNN. I'm the managing editor of CNN in the Gulf region. That'll be the Persian or Arabic Gulf region, not the American Gulf region these days. And the host of Connect the World with Becky Anderson. And as I say, it's absolutely fantastic to be here tonight. For what I think is going to be, what I know is going to be, an incredibly engaging evening with really insightful discussion and conversation. Welcome to what is the 6th edition of the Nature Positive Dinner in Davos, hosted by Andre and Rosalie Hoffman and the Nature Positive Initiative. I was delighted, as I say, to host the very first edition of this back in 2019. And it has, I know, become one of the key evenings in Davos. So I'm delighted to be back again. Back in 2019, the concept of nature positive was fascinating, but it was quite abstract. Today, it is a measurable goal embraced by the corporate world, recently dubbed by the FT as the new corporate green goal. At the international level, as you all know here, nearly 200 nations have adopted the definition of nature positive within the UN Global Biodiversity Framework's 2030 mission. That was, of course, just 2 years ago in Montreal. So building on that milestone, tonight's focus is all about implementation, how to turn ambition into action and accelerate the momentum towards a nature-positive future. We're going to hear from our hosts, leading voices in science and policy, and authors of the upcoming book, Becoming Nature Positive, which you will all get an opportunity to see tonight and get a first look at. So let's kick things off. Without further ado, let me invite Andre Hoffman to join us, together with his wife Rosalie. Of course, Andre has generously hosted you all tonight. And Andre, if you'll come and join me on the stage, I want to talk about your new book, your recent book, The New Nature of Business. Andre. How are you?
Well, I'm very well. I'm slightly worried that the majority of the people have already heard my stories 3 or 4 times. So don't have to
Well,
be
look, I haven't.
Good, I don't have to be creative.
How's your Davos been?
So far, so good. So surprisingly optimistic. You know, somebody talked about constructive optimism, and I think that's exactly what you're trying to do here. Obviously, the wind in the face is quite strong, so let's try to make sure that we keep the flags up, if that's all right. Maybe it's a mixed metaphor, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
I know what you mean, and I'm, I'm not going to leave the elephant in the room at the back of the room. I'm going to talk about why it is that, there is like you say, there is a constructive optimism. I think from many people here. I think there's a real fear factor out there as well, and we'll talk about that. In your book, you explore the new nature of business. Let's just lay the table, if you will. How central is being nature positive to this concept? And can you share some examples from your own company and others that you have studied?
Well, first of all, maybe it's worth explaining why one should confuse nature and business. Because in the past, it's always been very segregated. You were either a nature lover or a business maker. You were either making money, being professional, being strong, being macho, or you were being sort of nice and cozy and liking nature. Today, we really understand that it is not such a distinction. Today, we really understand that nature is not just the panda and the tiger, but nature is the life support system on Earth. And if we as business people have a business model which requires that we must abuse part of society in order to make a profit, well, we're just not doing the right stuff. We're just not, the business plan is the wrong one. So we need to rewrite the business plan to include not only nature, but also the three capitals, the social, the human, and of course, the natural one. So to answer your question, because it was a pretty direct question, I think when you talk about headwinds and you talk about difficulties of talking about nature in public nowadays more than we did only a couple of months ago, I'm absolutely convinced that the businesses who are equipping themselves to really deal in a proactive way with nature are the ones who are going to come successful. If we follow the instruction from the other side of the Atlantic and start burning, or drilling, we are going to have a terrible backlash in a couple of years' time, because science is not waiting. Johan will talk to this a little bit later. The evidence is building up. So ignoring the reality for political reasons or for whatever populist reason you can think of is not going to help us. And so the majority of forward-looking businesses are probably not going to change their activities too much because reality requires it.
Right, and I think everybody in the room will hope that you are right. What we are seeing is a growing backlash against companies adopting broader societal and environmental agendas, especially in the United States. And I would be remiss if I didn't note that President Trump has just pulled out of the Paris Accords for a second time, and he has a new slogan, which is drill, baby, drill. Against this backdrop, how should business leaders navigate this pushback? And how can we ensure that they continue to push forward regardless?
Well, I believe that business success is not just measured by the results, by the financial results, but it's measured also by the influence you have around you. Companies should not be running only for shareholders. Companies are not there just to make money. Companies are there to serve a purpose. And most of the successful companies on the planet have identified what this purpose is. If I take the example of our family company, we have identified that the purpose of our company is the patient. We want to provide new therapeutic solutions for unmet medical need. And in order to do that, we need to be successful, of course. So there need to be some positive cash flows, and these positive cash flows have to be recurrent and sustainable. But the idea of saying that we have to change our strategy or our purpose according to which way the wind blows, maybe that's not a good anecdote because of the renewable wind. But anyway, the idea that you change your mind all the time is just not going to work. Politics seems to be much more adept, in particular in the US, at changing every 4 years. A business that is looking in the long term cannot afford to do that.
And I want to note the head of Exxon ahead of the election, suggesting that if Trump were to pull out again, we face this situation where we're sort of lurching from, subscribing to unsubscribing and subscribing again. And I think, it was an important statement by a significant and notable CEO. But I guess, the question is, we are, it seems, living in a world where people are, and we've seen this from the tech guys, it's like I subscribe to you or I don't, I'm with you or I'm not. And that is a problem.
Yes, it's a problem, and it's a human problem. When we talk about the nature of business, we have to base ourselves on the phenomenon of nature. Nature is not previsible. Nature is chaotic. We will see later on many descriptions of that particular field. But the idea that we can change our mind about nature is just absolutely impossible. It's facts. It's not a political view. It's science, and science tells us we need to care about the planet. If we don't care about the planet, we're not going to be able to enjoy the fruit of all this beautiful money that the fossil fuels companies are making.
Right. Thank you. We are going to crack on with some opening remarks. Andre, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you very much, Becky. Thank you very much for coming 6 years later. It's been 6 years we do this dinner. I'm glad to say that when I look in the crowd, I see all sorts of new faces. So we are winning. That's
amazing.
Good. Thank you.
Amazing. I'll let you go. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Got a series of opening remarks for you now. So let me introduce Marco Lambertini. He needs no introduction. Convener of the Nature Positive Initiative and also author of the Becoming Nature Positive book. Everyone is into book writing, it seems. I'll have to, bring mine next time I come. It does seem, it's brilliant. So, floor is yours for your opening remarks, sir.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, everybody. Particularly, again, thank you, Andre and Rosalie, for your perseverance in hosting us every year. But particularly, I have to say, I was talking to Andre, and he was some months ago, and he said, they took away our space for the tent. And I said, oh, that's a shame, because that ambiance was so nice instead of being in a usual, room, etc. And I said, oh, don't worry, Marco, we're going to build the tent on the top of his own hill. And then I said, either, that was a rather debatable joke, or it was, after a couple of the best Andre Hoffman wine, and here we are on the top of a roof in a tent. So this is magic, Rosalie and Andre. This is, if you can do this, you can do everything. Secondly, Becky, I know I think I need to thank you again as well, because 6 years in the making, and now we've gone a long way, and I think having you back is so symbolic, because Becky really launched the whole thing in the other tent, but same kind of tent, 6 years ago, and you continue to be so passionate about this vision, and so thank you very much.
I'm very proud of you.
And there's so many great events in Davos. So this may not be the best program, may not be, for sure, it's not be the best lineup of speakers, but I think it's the best event in terms of audience. So thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. So let me just say 2 words of introduction, and then we move on with the program. And this is that in 2019, a group of organizations in this same venue in Davos launched the idea of a new ambition. Inspired by Paris, there was already showing its impact in terms of uptake of the net zero emissions goal, 1.5, companies' adoption and all the rest. We said it's time to have a Paris moment for nature. It's time to have a goal for nature, which is global, uniting action, driving ambition. Is it nature neutral, carbon neutral? Remember, at the time was really the word. Is it nature neutral really the right goal for something like that? Surely not. And so we had a fascinating group of people, and some have moved on to different jobs. Andrew Steer, for example, he was leading WRI and many others, and said, okay, let's try to push the ambition, not to what is political or palatable, but what is really necessary. Nature positive, net zero emissions, net positive biodiversity. And that's what it is. It is more nature at the end of the decade and continue to recover after that. It's a measurable goal because we start from 2020, which is the start of the new set of goals of the Montreal Biodiversity Agreement and framework, and it is a goal that complements the one on climate, and Johan will talk much more eloquently about that. Since this crazy idea, very ambitious as well, a lot of uptake, governments, businesses, and in 2022, with COVID in between, unfortunately, we did witness the impossible. Almost 200 countries agreed to a definition of a mission, the Global Biodiversity Framework 2030, exactly the language of the net positive, halt and reverse biodiversity loss by the end of the decade. We were absolutely flabbergasted because honestly, and I have to say, in this room, and she will speak in a minute, we have Becky Anderson, UNEP. I mean, the whole UN system has been really absolutely fundamental, as well as WEF, because WEF has really hosted a number of sessions to bring business support. So this was super exciting. And now, of course, that we have the goal, we have the backing of the world, at least in terms of multilateral agreement, is a question of implementation. And it's a question of providing the right narrative, the right persuasion, the right measurements, the right practicality of implementation that is still a bit missing when it comes to biodiversity. Biodiversity is still quite a complex issue for many companies in particular. We got to make it simpler, still credible, but help companies to start the journey towards nature positive. And I want to share with you and conclude with two quotes to capture a little bit, I think, the state of affairs of our time. The first one is one that I think you're very familiar with. Can you go back to the previous slide? I forgot to say, this is actually the group that after the adoption of the global goal in Montreal framework has expanded around the nature positive goal, the nature positive initiative, 27 core organizations. There are many in the room today. And we also have a much larger forum of organizations that you can join as well. Take a screenshot of the QR code and join the movement. But I want to share two quotes because the first one is one that I think everybody knows. It's Winston Churchill just before Britain decided to enter the war. Finally, the two quotes are exactly around the same time. And he's talking about the past neglect in the face of the plainest warning, we have entered upon a period of danger. The era of procrastination, half measure, soothing and buffering experience of delays is coming to a close. In its place, we are entering a time of consequences. I think this is today. It's not about the war, the Second World War, hopefully, that at the time was really looming, but it's about the situation in our relationship with the planet. It's time to stop ignoring and embrace neglect. It's time to stop procrastination. It's time to understand there are consequences. The second quote that I think many may not know, and accidentally, I swear, is from an Italian philosopher, Antonio Gramsci, was written exactly more or less at the same time. He was already imprisoned by Italian fascists. And that's what he says. It's quite hard. The old world is dying. The new one is struggling to emerge. And this is the time of light and shade. Monsters are born. Of course, he was referring to Nazism, fascism in Europe. But think about it again vis-a-vis our situation in terms of ecological transition. The old is dying. We know that. Society understands that the era of fossil fuel or chemical agriculture is going to end. But the new is struggling to start and to take place, particularly in many sectors that is stuck in the business as usual. And in this confusion of society, this uncertainty, monsters are born. Not necessarily, the Hitler and Mussolini of the time, but monsters that are manipulating information, are providing lies and simple, false solutions, and trick society into an easy solution that doesn't exist, instead of really building an exciting path forward towards a better future. And I think that's our challenge, is to explain that a future with no fossil fuel, with no pesticides, with less plastic in the environment, is a better future for everybody individually. We have to make it personal. That's, I think, Becky, our challenge.
Amazing.
To make the world a nature positive world.
Coming back here because my microphone there doesn't work. Can you all hear me? Thank you, Marco. Always love a Churchill quote, but that last was is really very powerful indeed. Let's hear from about what's going on here and the thoughts and perspective of renowned climate and planetary scientist Johan Rockström. And brace yourselves, folks, because I've got a feeling there might be just a little bit of worrying news in this. Johan.
Thanks, Becky, Andre, Marco. Let me just first start by saying that as a scientist, standing here in this room, it's really breathing clean air. Thank you for that. And I would say, I agree with Andre, being at WEF this year is also having fresh air, except possibly when you run the promenade on the way to find this new SDG tent and all the internal combustion engine cars are still just smoking. But otherwise, I would say that, yes, this is a collective effort of really trying to stay on course. And now I'll be sharing you the update on why there is so much reason to talk of a dark moment when we meet right now. And I assure you that is not only because of the geopolitical situation in the world. It is because of the steepness of the pathway we have ahead. We're running out of time. We are now concluding scientifically that we are the ones that are on the watch on planet Earth today. What happens over the next 10, 20 years on our watch will very likely determine the outcome on life support for all future generations for the next centuries, if not millennia. We are now putting the stability of the entire Earth system at risk, and it's happening right as we speak. Now, there's so much evidence that I can kind of load you with tonight, and I promise I won't do that. And I just want to bring up one thing that is really concerning us to the point where we don't even have the answers in the scientific community, and it's what's happening with global mean surface temperature on planet Earth. You've seen this Copernicus data. It shows that we've reached 1.54 degrees Celsius, the first time touching 1.5, the warmest temperature on Earth over the past 100,000 years. We know that this is the most expensive year of all presence of modern humans on planet Earth in terms of social and economic costs in this calendar year. But what really worries us scientifically is that since 1970 and 2014, we have this linear rise that calibrates all climate models of roughly, grosso modo, 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade of warming. That is, by the way, for those of you who are interested, which calibrates the climate sensitivity parameter, the holy grail of climate science, of 3 degrees Celsius per doubling of carbon dioxide. But look at what's happened since 2014 onwards. We see a jump, a rate change from 0.2 to roughly 0.3, and we don't know why. There's a whole list of candidates, and I won't struggle you through those, but in summary, it all boils down to the risk that the living biosphere is losing resilience. That we're seeing changes in albedo when ecosystems rapidly move to higher northern latitudes because of a warming temperature becoming darker. Ice melts and you get dark soil exposed to the sun. Carbon uptake capacity is going down on terrestrial ecosystems. The ocean is starting to misbehave both physically, chemically, and biologically. It is too early signals. It's not statistically verified, but it may be the first signs of a planet losing its health. And this is dramatic because over 150 years of our abuse on the planet, she's been so forgiving. A mother treating us like adolescent, hopeless teenagers and just shoving under the carpet our invoices that are now being sent back. This is what is worrying us. And of course, the science on this area is really at the cutting edge. I don't know if Carlos Nobles is in the room, but we spent together at the Arctic Base Camp today, again updating on the science that makes us so worried. Climate science shows that the basin in the Amazon, the world's richest terrestrial ecosystem on land on planet Earth, is at risk of crossing a tipping point, irreversibly becoming a degraded savanna because of the shift in the moisture feedback that feeds 40% of the fresh water in that system at 3 to 5 degrees Celsius of global mean surface temperature rise. Simply put, it means a low risk. You know, we're not really heading there. Well, we're following a path to 3.1 by the end of the century, but it would place the risk at a low level. Ecologists in Brazil, Carlos Nobres, Mercedes Bustamante, et al., tell us we're wrong. Because if we lose canopy, if we lose biodiversity, we then will lower the temperature down to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius if we lose more than 20 to 25% of canopy cover, because that opens up the whole system. It loses its moisture holding capacity thanks to the portfolio of biodiversity. Where are we today? At 1.3 degrees Celsius of warming and 17, soon 18% of deforestation. We are, to quote Carlos Nobres, very close to a tipping point in the Amazon. The drama is, as you all know, this is, of course, a biome that is in the national jurisdictions of the nations in South America, but it's also a global commons. We depend on it, all of us, as citizens of planet Earth. Our livelihoods in Davos, wherever you are, depends on a healthy Amazon basin. So that is the situation, that we're coming so close to tipping points. And then the question is, what's the journey forward? Well, as you know, the IPCC runs all their scenarios, and there are two families of scenarios that has a safe landing within a 1.5 degrees Celsius future. It's the C1 and C2 scenarios. We have recently at the Potsdam Institute, unpublished, ruled out that the C1, that door is unfortunately now closed. What is C1? It is the scenarios that we've all been aiming for, meaning that we would never exceed 1.5. We would balance ourselves to a new equilibrium at 1.5 as a maximum. That is unfortunately closed because of degrading all the biosphere capacities and loading with so much climate forcing because of all the greenhouse gases. So what remains as the best offer from science is what you see on the screen. That is C2 scenarios, the roughly 100 of scenarios that go through and crash through 1.5 sometimes in 5 to 10 years, so just around the corner. So we touched 1.5 last year, but that was just a single year. The IPCC definition of global mean surface temperature rise is the moving 10-year average. That's the Paris Agreement range that we're talking about. We have it just around the corner, and then we have an overshoot period of 30, 40 years of up to 1.6 to 1.8 degrees Celsius of warming before potentially coming back under 1.5 by the end of this century. Now, what does this tell us? It tells us two things. One is, dear friends, it will get worse before it potentially gets better. That I can say with almost 100% certainty. There's very little scientific uncertainty in that statement. Droughts, floods, fires, heat waves, human-reinforced hurricanes, all of this will get worse before it gets potentially better. Conclusion number two, why would we come back? Why would she be so generous with us to bring us back? Well, we know the answer. It's nature positive. That is the only solution. It's phasing out fossil fuels, stopping the supply, and investing in nature positive. Keeping ourselves away from tipping points and assuring that the ocean system and land-based ecosystems and the cryosphere remains as close as possible to the Holocene state that we all depend on. That is the way that can take us to the future. That is why I'm so enthusiastic that we now have scientifically, and so many of you are in the room, where we can now measure the safe operating space on planet Earth. We know how to quantify this. We have so many partners on linking this to Earth observation. To quoting you, Sylvia Earle, you remind me every time, isn't it so fantastic that we have come to this point where we can measure in detail our life support systems on Earth, both in the ocean and on land? And that is true. Now we are doing a planetary health check every year, as you know. We want to have this as real time. Andre Hoffman is in the room from Planet. We have our colleagues at ODE. We're developing a control center for planet Earth. Unfortunately, the latest planetary health check, and I'm coming to a close here, Becky, I promise, confirms that 6 of the 9 boundaries are transgressed. Unfortunately, you see the arrows show that we're still moving in the wrong direction. This is a real crisis we have on our watch. The ocean is very likely going to cross this boundary in this year's update that we'll be presenting at the New York Climate Week. The science is going on. But let me close with this first courageous attempt that we've done. We've tried to, for the first time, integrate all the life support systems, all the 9 boundaries into one assessment of where the planet is. So here you have the blood sample test. Here is the point of the safe space. Here is the danger zone, the uncertainty zone in science. And here's the high-risk zone of drifting irreversibly in the wrong direction. We placed the planet here. This is based on our best expert elicitation that we can do. This gives, in my view, to close this, 2 key messages. Message number 1, yes, we have a real crisis at hand. We need to truly be stewards of the entire planet. But the second message is, it's not too late. We can still turn this around. All evidence in the published literature shows that, remarkably, the living Earth system still has a resilience to regenerate herself if we turn this around and invest in the nature-positive journey. We're very close to lose it, but it's not lost yet. And of course, what we represent in this room is one path to the solution. Thanks for your patience.
And Johan, you're a great storyteller, and it's so important that we tell this story well. So thank you. We warned of some worrying news. I think you've landed and ended on a glass half full moment. But the warning's out there. So thank you for not depressing us all. Let's get you the critical voice now of multilateralism and the public sector. Join me, please, in welcoming Inga Anderson, Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme. Please join us.
It's obviously a very hard act to follow, always, Johan, but let me start by thanking Rosalie and Andre for your generosity. I was here in 2019 in this very tent, and here we are again. And I think, as you rightly say, the speakers may not be, Johan accepted and Andre accepted, obviously, the best lineup that you could find across Davos, but the enthusiasm, the commitment, the lifers that are in this room are unmatched. These are people who are working on this issue not because of a salary, not because of a check, but because of an absolute commitment to this little blue planet of ours. And so I sort of was thinking, well, what can I say that will not be said by all these clever people? And so I sort of thought, well, and maybe in the spirit of what Johan just said, I am one of the older people in the crowd, maybe. And no, say some thank you, I'll take it. But I was born at 315 ppm, and 315. And so when we got to Rio, we were at 356. I was at Rio, and we were very much convinced that we were going to turn this around. And then I can't remember the COP, maybe COP 6 or 7. Anyway, somebody came up and said adaptation. I go, hell no, because we just have to mitigate. Why on earth would we adapt to this thing when we know perfectly what it is? That was a conversation. And now, of course, we're all on the barricades because we understand what it is. And so by the time Paris rolled around, we were at 399 ppm. And today we are literally 100 ppm more than when I was born. And so what Johan has just described in this incredible presentation as he does it is that reality. But the reality is also that nature, this fragile little planet that we have, is a very much part of the solution space. And so that day when we sat on the podium and it was 4 a.m. and finally that camel went down, it was a moment of emotion. I was also in Aichi, by the way, for COP 10. And at that time, the gavel also went down. And that, too, was a moment of emotion. And I will never dismiss or diss those targets because they were the forerunner for, we stretch every time, we learn more. And so what we did in Aichi was a forerunner for what we have in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And that about halt and reverse that degradation that we have exposed planet Earth to is very real. And I take that into my own life. You know, my grandmother was born north of the polar circle at a place where it's rough and her people were, it was not an easy life, still isn't. And trees wouldn't get higher than us, right? Because you're right above the polar circle. Somehow she met my grandfather, long story, and she came to this lush country called Denmark. But my grandmother taught me that preciousness that nature is, because a little tree that may take 40 years to grow and maybe it gets to this height, you protect it. And so we were told that we have to, and she came with many traditions from the high north, we had to sing to the trees. We had to understand how vibrant nature is. And all of that is part of what makes each one of us, we have a journey that makes us fall in love with nature, want to understand the science behind it, and want to work for its protection. And so part of what my life's journey has been this, but I know everyone in this room is on the same journey with different on-ramps to the same pathway. And so that Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework was a critical moment. It was delayed because of COVID, but we got it. And I do believe that had it not been for the goodwill of so many people, many of whom are in this room, but also, and this is where realpolitik sets in, for the fact that we had a Chinese president. I have to say this, because that meant that you had the G77 not wanting to make too much. It meant that you had the global north not wanting to upset too much, also because Canada was hosting. It was a perfect moment of the world coming together by coincidence and happenstance, because we could not meet in China because of COVID. So the forces of nature were with us that day, and those 2 hard weeks. But of course, one thing is a gavel going down, and we all can do promises to each other. The question is whether we are going to live up to it. And this is what now stands before us. How is it that we're going to treat nature as that asset class you speak to, Andre? That it is a capital that is worthwhile investing in and protecting, not just for the philanthropic investments, but for the real investments. How do we make that happen? That is the challenge of our lifetime. That is what we need to do. At the same time, of course, take out of the system all these false engines that push us in the wrong direction, our subsidies, our crazy policies, our over-subsidization, including of toxics that we put into the soil. So, and of course, our hydrocarbon subsidies, it goes without saying. Understanding that and listening to the voices of the people, especially indigenous people. And so what we saw in COP16, which was, of course, the gaveling of a new voice for indigenous people. We should have had it in 1992, obviously. We all know these facts. Indigenous people are the stewards of biodiversity to a large extent. They teach us so much. And I know this from my own life. But they teach us so much, but we have discarded that knowledge. The fact now that they have a seat at the table in a subsidiary body, it's very technocratic subsidiary body, what, it matters. It is a seat at the table that has impact. And so understanding, taking away the subsidies, making these investables real, and understanding that what is good for planet Earth, what is good for nature, is good for business, as Andre said so convincingly. And so I will leave you with just 4 to-do items I want you to take with you, so that we just do not only stay with Kunming-Montreal, because there are other things at play. And so I need your help on the plastic negotiations. because plastic in our environment, suspended plastic, your wash of your technical clothing, your nice gym wear, you put it in the wash, 700,000 fibers will go straight from your washing machine into the open waterways. And of course, let alone the large debris of plastic that breaks down into ever smaller pieces, etc. So we want to take plastic out of the environment. What is the plastic that ends up in the environment? Of course, it is single-use and short-lived. Let's begin with that. Let's make sure we can deal with that. Let's, yes, reduce the single-use and short-lived. It goes without saying, should be self-evident. And we all know it when we see it, that wasteful stuff. And of course, do circularity for that which we must have, and safe disposal for that which is hazardous. But I need everyone to be with me on this journey, because we have to land this treaty this year. If we don't land it, it will smolder and fail. And so we have one more go at it too, of course. Food systems, Alle will speak to it more knowingly, I'm sure. But let's stop biting the hand that feeds us. I mean, farmers, you can't make them enemies. They are struggling. It is not easy being a farmer, and so they will do what they feel they have to do to maximize their yield. And if that means that I will put fertilizer and pesticide, I will put fertilizer, and you would too, if you were a smallholder farmer in Ethiopia and you were trying to eke a living out. So how can we support farmers to be nature positive? That is our big challenge, and yet farmers, we all have to eat. So we need to crack this and not vilify farmers. And 3, of course, infrastructure. It goes without saying. We invest in so much infrastructure, and we need all this footprint for all these people, and we want more and more footprint, and we gobble up nature. But can we please think about fragmentation? Can we please understand what that does? Can we bring nature into our cities? Can we be smart about the infrastructure that we seem to must have that connects city A to city B, so that it doesn't destroy that which needs to remain contiguous? There is a lot that we can do, and do smarter. And of course, restoration. When we look at conflicts, when we look at all the issues that we are seeing, and oftentimes it is because the land can no longer sustain people, and people are forced off the land by climate, by degradation, by desertification, by water shortages, by inundation, by toxicity, by ugly mining that has used mercury, that has polluted the waters, by whatever it is. So let's understand, therefore, that that land needs to be put back into actual productive lands, so that working landscapes will be what replaces these degraded lands, so that we will not go into the pristine areas. That's what we have to do. And I think we can. With this room here, and with the commitments that we've made, let's live up to those promises. Thank you so much.
Inge, thank you. A rallying cry, as if this room needed it. Inge, thank you. That concludes what is the opening segment. You need food, and it is on its way, I promise. While you are served, we are going to crack on, and I'm going to try and keep this to time. We are already running a little later than we had hoped, but I don't want to shortchange anybody. So we will crack on. I hope that's okay with you as you eat. It's my great pleasure now to invite onto the stage the co-authors of Becoming Nature Positive. Marco, I need you back on the stage, please, sir. Let's have a conversation about this brilliant book. And joining Marco on the panel are co-authors, Dr. Harvey Locke, a globally recognized nature conservationist who co-founded the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative and Nature Needs Half Movement. Thank you, sir. Dorothy Mazeke leads FSD, Africa's Nature Finance, in the African Natural Capital Alliance. And Eva Zabi is the CEO of Business for Nature, leading a global coalition to drive business action and policy ambition for a nature-positive economy by 2030. Right, yes, good luck, Becky. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Take your first bite. I'm going to need to just quieten you down a little bit, otherwise you won't hear anything that we are talking about. So 30 seconds, and let me see whether this is working.
It's going to be a rodeo.
Welcome to my rodeo, exactly. All right. Becoming nature positive. Marco, let me start with you. As I understand it, there are limited Davos editions of this book.
Yes.
If you're good, everybody, you will get a gift. You will get a copy tonight. Good, calm them down. There you go.
Look how easy it is to manage the crowd. You see?
Let's start with you, Marco. Just tell us how this book came to life, and who you collaborated with and why. This is a really diverse group, and it works. It really works. So just give us a sort of, the background to getting this done.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for saying that it works, because actually I think amongst the four of us here, by the way, there are two other main authors. They're not on stage, which is Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, the CEO of Jeff, former Minister of Environment and Climate and many other things in Costa Rica, and also Joe Bull, professor of Oxford University on Biodiversity. Apart from, so the four of us here on stage, apart from Harvey, that is always cool. I don't know what he's drinking during the day, but Eva, Dorothy, and myself are terrified by going out with this book now, because we decided that because Nature Positive has been seeing such a strong uptake, it was important to try to crystallize, not answering all the questions, but answer the question that we know an answer to, or posing the question we don't have an answer to, and try to define the journey so far. That will continue, hopefully, and probably there will be a second edition at some point. But because this was a very collective effort, when I approached the publisher, they hate multi-authors books because it's very hard work. And I said, "Dude, don't worry. We're going to take care of coordinating internally. We're going to provide you a book written by 6 authors and 23 contributors." They almost kick me out. I went around 5 publishing houses until I reached the one that said, "That's a nice, crazy idea. Let's do it." So we are terrified because, there is no consistency. We're different authors, different style. We didn't have time. We wanted to publish in a rush. I'm not selling the book very well, but
We want them to read it, Marco.
it's a great book because of that reason, because it's a very diverse set of views, and you will be the judge. So this is the deal. We're going to give you a book today, which is the advanced reading copy, special double edition. Nobody else has it. Nobody else. So one day, your grandchildren will make a fortune by selling, a vintage copy of this book. Also because I noticed already there are plenty of typos because we rushed. So, like with this beautiful Renaissance Michelangelo paintings where there is a mistake, they shoot the price up, it becomes invaluable. So anyway, we'll see. Or you throw it in the bin, whatever. But it will be, a book that will be remembered for a number of reasons.
Let me just ask you, so, given your involvement in this, where do you think that we are on the journey to becoming a nature-positive society and economy?
So I think, and actually this is the journey that, can you go with the animation, Gemma? This is the track that I've been using in the introduction of the book, and then of course the other authors has dived into that. This is the journey, Becky, in a nutshell. So first of all, I think we should remember and remind ourselves that we've been through a massive growth in terms of human development. Not equitable, but much progress. Until the 19th century, the start of the 19th century, half of the children were not reaching teenage. They were dying before, at the beginning of the 19th century. So the great rise of humanity has happened, and the nature has supported the great rise massively. This curve of the surge in human development and progress has masked two key dimensions. One is, of course, inequality, I already mentioned it, because the Great Rise hasn't been equal across the world. But the second one is the decline of nature. And that's the great decline of nature that has paralleled the great rise of humanity. Now we are at the point where the decline of nature, we heard it from Johan, is reaching such a point which is becoming a threat, the great threat of tipping points, irreversible tipping points, something humanity, species, Homo sapiens, never experienced before. And the great threat, luckily, is paralleled, and that's where we are, Becky, with the Great Awakening. Because we wouldn't hear what Johan told us today just 10 years ago. We wouldn't know the details of the state of the Earth systems and the solution that we can deploy just 20 years ago. So we are at the point now of the great choice, the choice of learning and listening to the evidence of science, understanding the consequences, and deciding. Because at the end of the day, it's in our hands. We made the problem, we can solve it, or we can continue to let nature go down, and very soon, nature decline will begin to affect, undermine future development, but also undermine past development. We are seeing already some indicators going down, stabilizing, because of climate change and nature loss. Or we embrace what we call in the book the great transition, which is the nature positive, net zero emissions. And by the way, nature positive, we call it nature positive, almost we should call it people positive, because there is no way you can have a people positive future without a nature positive one.
And that's a perfect way to bring in Harvey. Your chapter, Harvey, focuses on building a nature positive society and emphasizing the need to change how we see, feel, and value nature. Just before we get the gifted book, just give us a sense of what we get out of that in the book, and how you landed where you did.
Well, one of the most interesting things in my life is I've spent a lot of time all over the world, and I'm really curious about cultures. And one of the weird things is that the only culture in the world that thinks that nature is there as a doormat for us is the one that started halfway through the Roman era. With aqueducts and straight roads. Sorry, I'm not going to blame the Tuscan. You're a Tuscan. You're not a Rome. And even before that, the Western world didn't see the world that way. Like if you think of King Charles's invitation to his coronation, it had the green man on it. We saw ourselves as part of nature. Everyone did, and many people still do. So people from Africa still do. Indigenous people still do. Chinese people still do. And so the weird thing is that people that look like me are actually the anomalies. When you think of economic activity, people like me look like me are the ones, this is what you do to make yourself rich. But interestingly, our cultures all understand that we are of nature, from nature, and part of nature, except for what I call the Roman rupture. So one of the things we do in this chapter is my co-authors are Fu Wenwei, who's an academician of the Chinese Academy of Science and a president of university. Leroy Little Bear, who's one of the founders of the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and also the vice provost of a university. And Eliane Ubilajoro, who's a Canadian and Rwandan who now heads a forestry agency in Nairobi. And we explore these cultural traditions for their richness and for what they might mean for all of us to adopt these traditional views, which, if you look like me, used to be our traditional view too. And where we've gotten off track is we've mightily enriched ourselves, as Marco's graphic shows us, but we're now impoverishing our children's future. And we're at this point of inflection where we either continue to believe that the environment is a competing interest with the rest of society and a competing interest with the economy, or we embrace reality, the reality that Johan shared, which is that here's the earth, here's human society, and inside human society is the economy. And if you want the proof of that, the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of humanity, and humanity is a wholly owned subsidiary of the earth. If you got rid of people, you'd still have an earth, and if you got rid of the economy, you'd still have people. It's an absolute iron proof. And we talk as though the economy can't afford the change. My God, of course it can. It has to, or else it'll put itself out of business. but there's these other traditions that are already there in their heads. And I think we can all get there. And nature positive is simple. Halt, stop digging, and reverse, start filling. Pretty simple, pretty inspiring, pretty cool.
Let's talk about how we pay for this then. Dorothy. Thank you. Dorothy, you've written about the importance of redirecting financial flows away from nature negative activities. Look, COP28 in Dubai, I thought there was some sort of clear wins there, and climate finance, I think, got a seat at the table. Business and philanthropy got a seat at the table, and so there was a lot of, there's a lot of noise made. Since then, I spent a lot of time following what is happening on climate financing, what is happening on redirecting financing away from nature negative flows. It's not easy. I was hoping we would be a lot further down the road, even with sort of, how we do this, the sort of funds that we might put together. Altera is a very good fund. It's doing the sort of catalytic stuff that I think we need to see more of. But we know this is tough. And then you get a new Donald Trump administration. You get a nature negative administration. What needs to happen to make the shift for financial flows a reality? And where do you think the financial sector stands at present? I'm really fascinated to hear from you tonight.
I think you'll all acknowledge one chapter dedicated to finance is not easy. Putting all that together, and with Marco, I would say, can I do a couple thousand more words? And you'd say no. But let me just put it this way. 2% is 2% of the global GDP is currently estimated to be going towards environmentally harmful subsidies. Yet the financing gap is estimated at around 700 to 900 billion USD. And so you can see the paradox therein. And unless there is a significant systemic shift of financial flows, and financial capital being allocated, activities that degrade ecosystems will continue. And we are all seated in this room. I spent a number of years, not too many, maybe around 15 years of my life as a chief risk officer. And my role was actually, most of the time, anything that would come to my desk, I'd most probably give it a no-go decision. Why? There is no track record. Yeah. They want to invest in this new solution. There is this new insurance product that is to deal with mangroves or, whatever. It's not been done before. It's not been done. So why should we approve this? And most of the time, we'd have very good reasons on why we should say no. Now, that needs to change. Now, why is this shift critical? Of course, economic dependence on nature is quite significant. Over half of the global GDP, over 44 trillion USD, is moderately or highly dependent on nature. We've talked about the environmentally harmful subsidies, and we've also talked about the systemic risk, and we've learned about the science today. And a number of things need to happen. Regulatory shifts, of course, a great foundation. And within the chapter, and unfortunately I'm a spoiler, so I'll try and control myself. But one, Tony Goldner, for example, speaks about, the role of disclosures and the aspect of disclosing on risks, the aspect of disclosing on impacts, on opportunities, and dependencies comes out through that particular piece. Yeah. We also have Romy and Jessica. I think I saw Jessica in the room from UNEP-FI, the nature leads. And they also speak about the role of finance. And, looking at all this, and we are also seeing a number of asset managers, a number of banks beginning to shift their portfolios towards nature positive, initiatives and nature positive business. We are also seeing new and innovative products, bonds being, issued. We are looking at sustainability linked, loans, for example. So the products are coming up, but the question is, and I think one of the things that we really, really bring out is the fact that without scale, we cannot move the needle. And that needs to come out through, finance that will come from people in this room.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. Again, if you needed any further sort of encouragement to read this book, of course, and to lean into it. I think that's the main thing here. This is about a room full of people who, going to have the opportunity to lean into this book and really, take stuff out and take it with you on your own journeys. Eva, your chapter is on nature positive business, and you highlight how companies are starting to understand the double materiality of nature and put that in sort of, layman's language, their dependency on it and the impact that they have on it. This is a newer journey than the corporate focus on climate interest and awareness. Action is growing, and we've just been hearing what's going on as far as sort of financing is concerned. What gives you most hope, and what are you most concerned about?
Thanks so much. Well, I'm going to start with what worries me first, and I'll just say one thing, which is that here in Davos, I've had so many conversations about the pushback, the ESG, right? And we're going to waste all our energy talking about it, or are we going to lean in to this and actually do something about it? I'm worried that we're going to lose hope. We're going to start doubting ourselves when we all know that there is no economy on a dead planet. There's no business. So I think we need to lean in, face this challenging, learn, see the silver lining, which is we've got to sharpen our arguments and use business relevant cases that sharpen our own business case. So that's the worry that I turn into something positive, because I'm quite an optimistic kind of person. And the three things that I would say of why I'm optimistic, my chapter, the chapter, also a number of people who have helped contribute to my chapter as well. Peter Backer's there, Mark Goff, Erin Billman. I won't list them all because there are about 150. So no, there aren't really. I just wanted to check.
Don't worry.
But I start the chapter in with Silent Spring, actually, at the beginning of the environmental movement, and I come all the way to today. And the point of, when you look at the pushback we have today, you may say, well, yeah, compared to 3 years ago? Yeah, it feels like there's pushback, because 3 years ago we were super excited, and there was a lot of momentum. But compared to 10 years ago, and certainly compared to 1962, we've made a hell of a lot of progress. And that is demonstrating the momentum. We have over 1,500 companies and financial institutions from around the world, of all sizes, different countries that are part of the nature momentum, if you want, with us. We've got companies that are continuously signing calls to action to governments, calling for ambitious policies, and we did that at the Biodiversity COP16 just last year in Colombia. We've got companies that are developing, publishing, and submitting their strategies for nature. Companies actually are including nature in their strategies. This isn't not happening at all. And we have 30 of them on itsnowfornature.org, and the number is growing. So we have the momentum. That's the first thing that keeps me optimistic. The second thing is we have more consistency. We've been really learning and listening from climate. And we've been working together as key organizations to try and do the back office work so that it's as simple as possible for businesses. I'm not saying we've got everything perfect, but we all know that now all companies should assess, commit, and disclose on nature. Exactly. So we've got some people. Yeah, you see? And we've also... Okay, we're doing it again. It sounds good. No.
Taylor Swift over there. Yeah.
It was Swift, Harvey. But we also, with the World Economic Forum, WBCSD, Business for Nature partners, we've also then gone the next level down and said, okay, so sector level, can we be consistent on what are your top impacts, what are your top dependencies, priority actions? We started with 12 sectors. We're now up to 14, with another couple that have been announced here in Davos, and we've got another one coming next month. So we're getting to that consistency. So you cannot spend years developing a materiality assessment. Go straight to the action, and you know what to do. Again, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And the third thing that keeps me optimistic is that we have natural intelligence. No, we do have natural... Does anyone get it? No, okay, so there's a theme here in Davos. Right, no, but we actually do have a natural intelligence because we, over the past few Yeah, so finally understood that all of these issues are interconnected and that people and farmers, as Inga was saying, are at the center. But people at the center, and we can only solve these challenges together. And I am very optimistic about that because we haven't had these conversations with this level of maturity and fluency before in the business world.
Thank you. To wrap things up for this stage of the evening, let's go in reverse order. In just one sentence, tell me what you think is the single most important action needed to achieve a nature-positive future.
All businesses need to act and advocate. They need to step up and speak up because nature is a non-partisan issue.
Lots of commas, no full stop, one sentence. Good, thank you. Harvey.
The halt part.
Like my chapter.
Well done. Harvey.
Marcel Proust here. The halt part of halt and reverse is the most essential part of the nature positive vision. When you're in a hole, stop digging. We're digging with a backhoe right now, and we're filling it with a shovel on restoration. Stop digging. That's the number one thing, and it's all within our power to do. And stop digging with a smile because we're talking about a bright future here. A really bright future.
You were so cheated, but well done. Love it. Dorothy.
When it comes to nature, there's no competition. So I'd advocate for collaborative leadership over competitive leadership.
Very nice. Love it. Marco, sir.
Now, you know, I mean, it's been hurting cats writing this book. And a great pleasure, of course, and a great pleasure. I go back to what I said before. I think we really need to build a narrative that is persuasive. My grandmother was a farmer. He was receiving, in the 60s, when pesticides started to ramp up and herbicide, receiving visits of, I don't mention the company because I still remember, coming, you know, and showing, you know, you do this, you do that, you increase your yields, you get better money, you know, you produce more. And it was persuasive. They were selling a concrete, better future. And our green narrative is still seen by many as a green elite abstract perspective. We've got to make it personal. Personal, so okay, individuals feel this is the future I want. A nature positive, net zero, people positive future.
We'll let him off. Good, well done. Thank you to all of you. Thank you. Right. Let me now welcome to the stage Achim Steiner. You all know who Achim is, administrator of the UNDP, of course. And His Excellency Nara Chandrababu Naidu, Indian State Minister. Sir, please come and join us on the stage. Come and join us, sir. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Come sit here. Come sit here. Hello, sir. Now you can take that. We'll shake hands. Good to see you, Achim. A good friend. We see each other regularly. It's a joy to see you. And sir, this is the first time you and I have met. Absolute pleasure. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Nice of you.
How is Davos for you?
Excellent, exciting.
Good, good, good.
Compared to there, everybody is here now.
Yes, exactly. All the
Lovely uni.
all the clever people are in this room tonight.
Yeah.
It's good to have you, sir. To pick up, Achim, I'm going to start with you wherever left off. There is a theme here in Davos. It is that we have moved from apparently the fourth industrial revolution to the intelligent age. And you can't walk down the promenade without being bombarded with the, I think, oft-times slogans that are AI tacked onto a lot of what we see here. But there is, there's real sea change. I mean, I noticed the plethora of sort of AI and advanced tech on the promenade last year before. But we are really in quite a new stage at this point. You've been part of the nature positive journey from the beginning. I just wonder how you see the future, how AI and advanced tech might play a significant role in providing solutions and what the obstacles are to your mind that need to be overcome.
Thank you, Becky, and good evening, everybody. It's always wonderful to be at a dinner in Davos that is actually on the right side of history. So that is why, Andre,
I
I'm
agree.
always very grateful when you invite me, and I know I have to earn my dinner. But Becky, this is the easiest question you've ever asked me, because usually I sit opposite her when she's broadcasting, and I get all sorts of curveballs. You know, when you work for the United Nations, Inga, you know the feeling. We are responsible for everything, and we have no power to change anything. So, but on a more serious note, Becky, I think the advent of, new technological frontiers is nothing new. I sometimes am a little bit surprised how we seem to be discussing, the advent of AI now as if this is some sort of we are moving to another planet. I mean, clearly, it is more transformative. It is at greater scale. It is faster, but in some ways, we have dealt with technology in the past. It holds great promise, and it carries with it risks. The fact that in Davos, somehow the whole future of humanity and the global economy gets reduced to one technological leap forward says perhaps more about the narrow view that Davos sometimes echoes on how the world works. And I think, having said that, let me, in a sense, say, yes, I actually do believe that AI incredibly expands the scope for addressing some of the issues that we are particularly preoccupied with. A very simple one. AI, I learned recently, could allow us to use existing transmission lines for electricity up to 50% more in terms of the amount of electricity we can pass through them, because our ability to predict weather and therefore the amount of electricity that can pass through high voltage transmission lines could actually increase significantly. Imagine what that means for developing economies that are dealing with, let's go to Kenya. Inga, you're home now, and we recently sat on the rooftop of UNEP. A wind farm in Lake Turkana nearly didn't get built because it was too far away in terms of the national grid and what you had to do. On the other hand, science. I think Planet Earth is here, many others are here who are beginning to get a sense of the extraordinary capacity we have to monitor change on planet Earth today. Not only from space, but in terms of the data we're able to process, the accuracy with which we can also begin to predict what may happen next. And I think, to Johann's point, yes, we are in a very serious moment, but actually our capacity to act is growing exponentially. And AI is something I think we do need to very quickly get our heads around, because it's not just the next market for great companies that are selling an algorithm or artificial intelligence. It's also a way of mobilizing what I would call our collective intelligence to act in view of what we are able to see more clearly, not only in terms of problems. One of our challenges is, I think, in our public debate today is that we are often very focused on the bad news. I think we also need to give, a little bit more airtime to the good news. Dorothy and Eva just gave some examples. If you just take the last 10 years, they're extraordinary stories. Imagine what AI could help us to achieve over the next 10 years. So maybe that curve that Johann said makes C1 almost or no longer a viable proposition. I would question the certainty of that, but I certainly respect and acknowledge the likelihood of that. Thank you.
We talk about the good news, and we talk about solutions, and we talk about, the need to actually, get sort of glass half full on this. And Your Excellency leads me seamlessly into the work that you've been doing. Chief Minister, during the panel, we heard that transitioning to a stable and sustainable food system is so important. Your state has championed regenerative agriculture for years. What lessons can you share for countries that are just at the beginning of this journey?
I'm very happy we are all having a dinner now. Before that, you have to think once what type of food we are eating. It is all sometimes fertilizers, pesticides, so much of damaged soil, all these things. We are very happy to announce now, we started with one farmer. Today we are having 1 million farmers who are doing natural farming. That is the success of the last. Another 4 years to go. We wanted to make it 4 million farmers. At least to a certain extent, I can contribute good food, healthy food for the global community. We are all talking about nature. All of us should be on the right side of development now, not on the left side. We are shown the map today. Only 2-3 aspects, even developing countries for all of us. One is how to bring sustainability in environment. Only answer is green energy. Second is natural farming. Third one is circular economy, how to go about. These are all 3 aspects we are working in a big way. India is leading now. In future, green energy, green hydrogen, India will be the main hub for the global community. Even developed countries, cold countries, you need more power. We are prepared to supply. That is going to happen in the near future. I am very happy with the difficult situation we started natural farming. Nobody believed. Women, I started Dhaka Women Self-Help Group 3 decades back. Today they took leadership they are taking over. I am very confident all of us are here. We are going to meet regularly in Davos. We will interact regularly. Year by year, all of us will join together to create an ecosystem for natural food, natural farming. Farmer is important, farmer first. To have better benefit for the farmer, I am requesting all of you to create proper ecosystem. I am going for traceability and also certification and also buyers. Today morning we had an excellent discussion. If you can mobilize institutional finance, even UN, I am very happy. You don't have powers, but you are having excellent power of influencing global community together. That is where you are working sustainable goals. You make it natural food also, and all of us will work together. We will take lead. You support us. Finally, one day Davos should tell we are all in favor of natural farming. That is where.
Are you in? Are you in? Excellent. Both of you, thank you. Given that we are going to try and keep this to time, I'm going to let you go. But before I do that, where are we on the journey, Akim? You didn't swerve the question because it wasn't particularly probing, but I didn't get as far as I wanted to. So before I let you go, where are we on the journey?
Let me just give you an image. When I first arrived in Nairobi, I met Wangari Maathai. It was the time that Kenya hosted the climate conference. And as you know, for those of you who know, Wangari Maathai, Nobel Peace Prize winner, leader of the Green Belt movement, she said, look, it's all very well for us to have this conference here, but if this conference is only about words and papers, it leaves no track behind. That's when the Billion Tree Campaign was created, and she literally said, we will call on the world to plant 1 billion trees. I think we don't celebrate those moments, and the simple answer is, I think we are actually at a moment in time where going from 1 to 1 million farmers, going in China to a moment where almost 50% of all new cars sold last year are electric and hybrid vehicles, where Norway expects this year all of its vehicles to be electric vehicles, and where Ethiopia has simply banned petrol and diesel cars. where energy now is being produced across the world in numbers that were unimaginable 10 years ago. I mean, we just sort of noticed $2 trillion invested last year in renewables. Have you for a moment reflected on what that means? We are actually, if I may put it in very simple terms, on the ramp that takes us onto the highway that should make us actually celebrate the moment of extraordinary pivoting forward, notwithstanding, including the political setbacks that will come. But, you know, let us not be surprised. There is a political economy out there. What is happening right now should perhaps not be a surprise. Systems are responding, systems are reacting, but I think we are actually on an age of possibility that may sound like a contradiction when you read the daily news. And I think it is that strength that we need to find over the coming years, not to be distracted by the rhetoric, but rather study why people are actually lining up behind the kinds of transformations that I think we are often speaking about, perhaps in terms that are not as easily understood by those who are out there. But in that sense, I'm actually very hopeful, even though, as Johan said, time is not on our side.
I wanted to add one more thing here. By 2030, India is going to add 500 gigawatts renewable energy.
More than any other country has
Yes,
ever
India
built
is
in
number
that
one.
short period of time.
In my state, in my province, 32%, that is 165 gigawatts we are going to add within 4 years' time. That is the contribution for the nature. You have to, one more thing I wanted to appeal again. One is environment protection. Second is to protect our health. Environment protection and protection of our health will happen only natural farming, good food, that is possible. Double advantage if you adopt natural farming. Those who are say yes for my proposal. Natural farming. Show your hands first. But you will follow me. I'm a trendsetter. I've done my best. Now everybody has to follow.
Can I ask you, look, I've had a number of quite sort of combative interviews with the Indian oil minister of late. I like him a lot, good guy. But look, unapologetic about buying cheap oil from Russia over the last couple of years, unapologetic about, you know, the state of coal-fired power stations and all the rest of it, because he says, you know, I have a country that is, you know, the demand for energy is huge, and I have to be responsible about it. Look, you can buy that argument or not. What I want to know from you is, are you getting support for the projects that you've been so successful with? Are you getting support from up top? Is the work that you've done the exception that proves the rule, or is this something that will now be embedded in, you know, a federal system?
That is what I'm saying. This is the policy of my government, federal government. Even our Prime Minister Narendra Modi is very keen for environmental protection. That is Paris Agreement. That is where we are collectively working. As he rightly mentioned, artificial intelligence. India is very strong. Indians are very strong in information technology. That is where biggest contribution from Indians to the global community. Tomorrow you are going to see artificial intelligence first adopter, first mover is Indians again.
And a digital society has resulted in the levelling up in India that we really haven't seen elsewhere.
Digital currency is the highest in India. No other country.
You got the room. You deserve a supper, as you do, Akim. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody. So here's what I'm going to ask of the organisers. I probably bought as a 5-minute break, but if I take the 5-minute break, do you all promise, unless anybody's absolutely desperate to use the loo, do you all promise to stay where you are? Because if I lose the room at this stage, it's going to be really, really difficult to get it back. So, Marco, what do you think? Take a 5-minute break? 15-minute break. We'll take a 15-minute break. Is that too long? That's too long. We'll take a 5-minute break. And after that, I'm going to get you to Mark Goff. 5-minute break. 5. 5 minutes. 5-minute break. Okay. All right, everybody. Work with me here. We only have another 40 minutes to go. Oh my God, am I going to have to raise my voice? Work with me, everybody. Please retake your seats so that we can move on with the evening. Okay. For those who are staying, and I know we're losing the Minister. Minister, it was super to see you. Thank you, sir. Wonderful to meet you. Please take your seats. Next up, it is my pleasure to introduce Mark Goff, the CEO of Capitals Coalition, who will frame what this next conversation is all about. Mark.
Thank you. And thank you very much for calling a break just before I come on stage. That was very kind of you. So I'm going to build on what Inga was saying earlier on, that there are moments in time where things come together, and we've had several of those. If you come back to 2000, there was a period of time coming together. 2015, it felt like for a lot of us there was a connectivity. We've been living in a golden age, I think, over the last 10 years, where a lot of the initiatives that we've been involved with have been able to flourish. And that's been no more obvious than in the standards and the frameworks and the target setting space, where there's been an awful lot of new initiatives being set up, an awful lot of growth in those, and we've been able to really flourish, I think, in the way that we've been doing this. From the Natural Capital Protocol that I was involved with about 10 years ago now, which brought together 40 different approaches, through to many of the others which we're going to bring up onto the stage tonight to talk through to find out where the state of standards and disclosures and the target setting is at the moment. Because I think we're going to be going into a different phase in this next period of time. So if this has been the golden age of where we are, we really need to understand what we've achieved from that and what we can be taking this through into the next stage. So if I can call up the panel, please. So Jessica Fries from A4S and GRI. Let's go this way along. And then Lauren Smart, S&P. Have we got the names up there? Even better. Sustainable One. Means I can't get them wrong. You sit here. I'll stay at this end. And then Peter Barker and Erin Billman, please. Come on, Peter. So, we've had a lot of opportunities to develop new standards and things. One of the first in this block was GRI. So 25 years now, lots of different developments over that period of time. And coming out, was it last year or this year with the 101 on biodiversity. So how has the biodiversity guidance been received? And what's that feeling like from the business perspective?
So I don't know, I think at the end of the evening, the idea of having a panel focused on reporting, I'm sure is exciting everyone. But my background was trained as an accountant, and Peter is also an accountant. So you have an even more exciting opportunity to look forward to. But in all seriousness, if we don't have the right kind of information to drive decisions, we're not going to get anywhere close to driving the kind of outcomes that we're all working towards. And for business, frameworks and standards is essential. I chair GRI's supervisory board alongside, as Mark mentioned, in my day job running accounting for sustainability. And through the work that we do with the business, finance and broader stakeholder communities, really building the kind of frameworks and reporting and disclosure standards is really critical. what I certainly find is that for a lot of businesses, nature still is seen as new. And this is even more so with my A4S role, because we work with CFOs, finance teams, and they are often all in or really over that learning hump on climate, but they're still asking us questions about why nature. So I think, Jochen, we probably need to get a few more presentations there, and that's certainly something that we're doing. But if you look at GRI, I mean, the standards around biodiversity have been there for a very long time. And companies have been reporting on these issues for a very long time. So I think we need to just acknowledge that, yes, there's a lot of complexity. And if you look at GRI's significantly updated Biodiversity Standard 101, has really reflected a lot of the huge developments that have been made. So just one is, of course, really thinking through value chains and understanding and being able to report much more effectively along the value chain, which is, of course, critical and where most of the impacts really lie for most organisations. But this isn't something that is brand new and that organisations are only just starting to grapple with. So I think we really need to make that point much clearer, and that this is something that organisations have been doing for a long time, imperfectly maybe, but you need to start somewhere, and we need to be accelerating that pace. So really cutting through the complexity, giving organisations somewhere to start, and the GRI standard, which builds in and references all of the other frameworks and is built in collaboration with other standard setters that are working in related spaces, I think is really critical. And that gives you that global focus and the information that will drive different kinds of decisions that we desperately need made.
Excellent. We'll come back round in a minute. If I can come to you, Lauren. Sustainability One, obviously S&P, but you're here today representing TNFD, which has been one of the success stories, obviously, more recently. 500 companies signed up. Why are companies really getting behind the TNFD? Why is it working so well?
Thanks, Mark. So, yes, I'm representing TNFD today because I'm one of the members of the task force. It has been, I think, such an incredible success, the organisation so far. And I think that's because what we really need is to have metrics and targets that businesses can use, that investors can use, that banks can use, that can help to direct capital, that can help to direct strategy, that can help to inform investment decisions. As you mentioned, Mark, we're at 500 companies across all different sectors, so that includes the finance world as well, who have now committed to getting started. And I think that's super important. Not only is it 57% up on this time last year, it's also critical that that intent has been made clear and that the journey is starting, because one of the key things that we need to see is how to make sure that the metrics are not just reporting for reporting's sake. We need to make sure that the metrics are put into practice to see what's most useful, most relevant, that's going to help businesses to make better decisions and going to help investors and banks drive capital in the right ways. And that comes through the practice as well.
Excellent. Peter, bring some pragmatism into this conversation then. Why did that get a laugh? Okay. Peter, so WBCSD has been involved in almost all of these standards at some point, has played a role. I know in all the work that we've done, you've been a key partner in many of these different initiatives in TNFD, the TISFD, so the inequalities and socially related financial disclosures, you're on that at the moment. What is it, where do you think businesses are in this at the moment? Are they getting a bit, are they ready for more standards? Do they want more standards? Is that what they're calling for?
Well, it's so funny. I had a lunch today on valuing nature where I was introduced as, we're now going to talk about accounting. This is boring. So I don't know. Now I'm in dinner. Does anybody know where business is in Davos today? Are there actually values in business that we're willing to protect? It's a big question. One thing I can say is there's no room for wishful thinking. We need to fundamentally rewire the economy. And that requires very careful engineering that some people call accounting. And so we need metrics, we need TCFD, we need a greenhouse gas protocol for nature, we need the ISSB to come up with a disclosure framework. There's lots of technical engineering pieces of work that we need to do. I don't really know where business is. I know where leaders in this room are, but we're the minority in this town this week. The one call I hear from business, and that is kind of amplifying what I think Johan was telling us, let's stop differentiating climate from nature. It's one agenda. I mean, there's two dear friends from the UN in this house. Can we please stop having 3 COPs? Just one. And I've had... Poor Inger has explained to me that this won't happen in my lifetime, but it gets you the applause. But on a serious note, you know, if climate spins out of control, nature gets destroyed. If nature is restored, climate will be helped. And we're at the edge of not making that happen. So what we've seen, TCFD has been amazing in waking people up. Nature-positive roadmaps have been rolled out. But unless we now drill into the next step, into metrics, counting systems, disclosures, we won't win the fight. So, I mean, this is Andre, thanks for bringing us together. This is an amazing feel-good place to be. But if you walk outside, nobody knows what we're talking about here. We need to get into the heart and the guts of the economy to make this happen.
I think it's quite a good introduction for you, Erin, isn't it? So, science-based targets. You've got to the 17 companies applying this now. Why is science-based targets so important in this story here?
Well, we actually have, I've been kind of reflecting on my own personal evolution of the years that I've been participating in the Nature Positive Dinner. And, you know, at first just having a goal, saying it's about nature rather than science-based targets for planetary boundaries, or, you know, yes, we need to get companies to operate within planetary boundaries. The mechanism to do that is science-based targets for nature primarily. We now have consensus NGO support on how much is enough for a company to do its part. So that's huge. And with that, we had 17 companies that actually used it and progressed through. And I think where I want to be shining a light, storytelling-wise, is on those brave companies that really took that leading step, because they're not committing to do something in the future. They did it. It's done. They have the first science-based targets for nature, beginning with freshwater and land. And I think from a storytelling perspective, this is really powerful because it shows that it's possible. I was sitting in a tiki bar in Sarasota, Florida. Long story. But it was for professional reasons, a board that I'm on. And the person next to me started trying to start a conversation. And he started it with, "Where are you from?" And I said, "California." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." That's how our conversation started. And I replied, "You don't need to be sorry. I'm not." So you can imagine that's the tone. Where can it possibly go from here in a positive direction? Well, he asked me what I did for work, and I explained that we're helping companies do their part through increasing the productivity on land and having co-benefits so that there's less nitrogen and phosphorus running into the Gulf. And he lit up and he said, "I'm an avid fisherman and I'm worried about red tide. Thank you for the job you do." And it was that moment that I thought to myself, we can be the great unifier here. Back to the point around narrative. Like, we've got the biggest opportunity at hand. This doesn't have to be polarizing. It doesn't have to be a leftist, a progressive point. And I think that's what I hope that we can take some inspiration from.
And I'm now going into the room. And I'm going to come. Oh, she had to go. I should have checked before I jumped off the stage, shouldn't I? Now I look really stupid, don't I? Okay.
That's a real bummer, because yes, we were really hoping that Adeli from GSK could tell you firsthand, because GSK was one of the companies that has publicly adopted their science-based targets, beginning with fresh water. So we're really grateful for their leadership, but unfortunately, I guess we talked too much among ourselves to get time for her to contribute.
Yeah, and I hope she's working on the science-based target. That's why she had to go. So let's just come back here then. So one thing I wanted to come to, so the Nature Positive initiative has been looking to bring together some common understanding of state of nature. And all of you and many of the others in this room are a part of this. Why is it important that we get this consistency? And I'll just come through one more time to all of you. And also, what is it we need to do next? As I was setting out at the beginning, we've all been having this wonderful time of growth in all of these ideas and all in the Sustainability Initiative. It looks like that is going to change. So we're going to need to consolidate some of these things that we've been doing. We're going to need to look at ways that we can connect up. And I think this word align is overused. Someone was saying this morning, Clara Barbie, who I think is in the room, that we either need to go full hog and find a way to connect these things completely, or we need to show the differences between them. So two questions here for you to sort of pick apart. The Nature Positive Initiative commonality that we're looking at. So that's the key thing. How do we build that confidence and that commonality? Jessica?
So I think what's really important about the work that Marco and the Nature Positive Initiative has been doing in collaboration with so many organisations is helping to really set that North Star. So I think for businesses and for other organisations, we need that clarity of where we're trying to work towards. And it needs to be in a simple enough way that you really can focus and achieve progress. And I think that that's really critical. I think you saw in climate how catalytic net zero was. Organisations could really focus in about where they needed to go. I think the other thing that has been really reassuring from the conversations we've been having with business, and I agree, Peter, it's not everyone, but actually one of the lunches that I was at today, a lot of the businesses there were talking about maintaining a focus on science and having science at the heart of driving the different kind of actions. And I think when it comes to nature, having the science at the heart of the kind of metrics and the direction that all organisations can then align behind is really critical. And having a common set that is agreed is fundamental, because otherwise organisations are starting out by thinking, how do I work out where I need to be going? And as Eva was saying, actually what we need the focus to be is on action. And the more we can accelerate that pathway to action, the better. And I think that this is a really fundamental step forward to enabling that to accelerate.
Wonderful. Science at the heart of it must be. Lauren?
I'm going to go to the second part of your question, Mark, which was around what needs to happen next. And you talked about connections. So somebody earlier on stage talked about the importance of storytelling. And Peter, you talked about the fact that we here are a tiny subset of Davos talking about nature. Most people out there are talking about AI. And I think that there's a lack of connectivity between some of those topics that the people out here are talking about and the people in here are talking about. And by that, I mean, I wonder how many people that are out there talking about AI and the importance of the decarbonisation of the grid are also thinking about the fact that increased electrification, decarbonisation of the grid requires a lot of lithium. It requires other transition commodities. And if we look at the location of transition commodities, about a third of the mines that are in key biodiversity areas are for transition commodities. So that huge increase that we've been hearing about in AI capacity, in power that's required in order to drive that, all of those key topics that we're hearing about outside of this room are critically connected to nature and to biodiversity, and the success of those businesses will be connected to our ability to make those companies outside this room realize that connectivity. So we do need to absolutely have metrics and targets that are practical, that are useful, that help to drive important decision making, but we also need to do really important storytelling to connect the dots between nature and the and some of the things that people outside this room are talking about.
Excellent. Peter.
Well, by now I obviously forgot your question, but
Doesn't matter, just answer anything, it's okay.
we need to do two things. And that's a tricky thing for us in the room. We need to do two things. One is we need to fundamentally rewire the economy. There's not a business in the world that will operate without nature. That's the most important asset we have. It's not on our balance sheet. How do we put nature on the balance sheet? That's a deep question where people like Martin Stutchley and others, Land Bank, are doing deep work. That will take too long, so we also need to work on the short term. I always say Mother Nature screams at us in a language that is called water. There's too much, too little, and that disrupts supply chains. There's massive risks in supply chains today because of floods or droughts or heat or whatever it may be, and business is not on that case. There's almost no company that does a risk assessment with natural physical risk in supply chains. And there's examples that between 25 and 75% of earnings are gone within 5 to 10 years. That's a conversation that any board, any business will listen to, and that's the way to drill nature into a boardroom.
Erin.
Well, I think bringing it back to the Nature Positive Initiative and the State of Nature metrics, we all need to collectively have a short list of pragmatic ways in which we're measuring outcomes for nature, so that we know how goes our collective work toward meeting our global goal of halting and reversing nature loss. And the former strategy consultant in me really is excited about finding the 80-20 answer that's hopefully MECE, meaning mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, so that we can help businesses be able to move forward more efficiently, effectively. So that's the potential and promise here with the draft we've got out that we're about to test.
Wonderful. If you would thank the panel for me, we'll pass back over to Becky.
Thank you very much indeed. Storytelling. I was that person in the room who talked about storytelling. I can't emphasize how important it is, and thank you. There are so many good stories to tell. Bring them to me. I'll tell them for you. That's a commitment from me. We are getting towards the end of what has been a super evening. But before we close this out, let's get some final comments for the evening from Sylvia Earle, an American marine biologist, explorer, author, lecturer, can't say the word oceanographer. Oh, actually I can. So I was going to say somebody who studies the oceans as well. And most excitingly, a National Geographic explorer at large since 1998. Sylvia, please join us on the stage.
Just trying to imagine the possibilities that are gathered here in this room. Here in Davos, of course, but here in this room. Because here, it seems that there really is a recognition that nature matters. And there's the recognition that we have what is perhaps the last best chance we will ever have to change the trajectory that we as humans have been on, at least for the last 10,000 years, consuming nature to foster our prosperity. Maybe it is time to shift in the other direction. Consuming nature to generate wealth. Maybe we have to take wealth to regenerate nature. Considering the precarious position that everything we care about is now in. I mean, if you like to breathe, you'll listen up. If you like water magically falling from the sky, listen up. If you really care, not just about your life and what is there for you to achieve in however long you're going to live, but those you care about, all of us are the beneficiaries of all that has gone before. We don't have to start with generating an alphabet, learning numbers from scratch, getting the concept of what does zero mean. We know what Earth looks like from space. When I was a child, we could speculate, but nobody had been high in the sky to really verify that the world is blue and that this is the only place in the universe that is beautiful, but really not very friendly to the likes of us. Yes, we can perhaps set up housekeeping on the moon. We can perhaps terraform Mars for some of us, but not 8 billion of us, or 10 billion, not for humankind, not for all of the things that we are, or that we have, that we carry along with us, our traditions. And oh, by the way, so exciting in the 21st century to see a return to respect for those who have gone before, the indigenous people of areas who've lived a long time in harmony with nature, and to learn from that wisdom. But we need to put on the balance sheet as well, nature on the balance sheet for sure. But what about respecting those other elders, those other indigenous individuals, communities, cultures, trees, whales, all the life on Earth that preceded us? We're newcomers, and we've taken advantage of billions of years of life transforming rocks and water. There's lots of rocks out there in the universe. There's plenty of water in the universe too. But Earth is the only one that has that combination of rocks, water, and life. 4.5 billion years of fine-tuning to get us to where we are. It's taken us about 4.5 decades, the lifetime represented here in this room, to significantly alter the nature of nature. We have power that no generation has had before to convert nature, dominate nature. In the end, it's pretty clear. Just ask Johann and his colleagues who've crunched the numbers, looked at the trends, have the science, have the evidence. We think we're winning. Look how prosperous we are. We've gone from 500 million people in 1500 to 1 billion in 1800, 2 billion when I came along. And now we see, by 1980, there were 4 billion, and here we are, twice that number. That has to be prosperity. But what is the cost? Consuming nature. We have to understand, and now we can. The good news, the reason I tell kids how lucky they are to be 21st century human beings. Look at us, that's who all of us are. We have never known more than is now known. One of the things that we've got to get better at is recognizing the magnitude of what we don't know. Johann mentioned the surprise. And when I first heard Johann speak here in Davos, it was 2012. and presented the idea of planetary boundaries, there was the element of surprise as one of the things that we had to be mindful about. So we have the ability to crunch numbers as never before. Welcome, AI. Welcome. As never before, we can take the knowledge that we've got and look at patterns that we couldn't see before. Look at the associations, look for pathways that can take us through this web of uncertainty. But beware of what we don't know. And I'm thinking particularly about the place on planet Earth where 97% of the water exists, where 97% of the biosphere exists. Talking the ocean, of course, the world, after all, is blue. We are terrestrial, so throughout our history, we've focused on what we think of as our home, the land, the trees, the birds, the insects, all those pesky insects without which we could not exist. We're beginning to get to that point of really respecting the land, rewilding things that have been lost, planting 1 trillion trees. I hope the right trees in the right places, but but think of what we're doing to the ocean, de-wilding the ocean with subsidies that make it profitable to kill wildlife by the ton, not just by the ton, by millions of tons. We've done this so successfully since the middle of the 20th century that the world that I knew as a child no longer exists. It just doesn't exist. We can look at the land and see the conversion of wilderness to human purposes, almost half for agriculture alone, just to feed us, to grow the plants, a lot of the growing the plants to feed the animals that we eat. But the ocean, we still look at the ocean as an infinite source of wildlife to take by the ton. De-wilding the ocean with subsidies, billions of subsidies being applied to find, capture, and market wildlife by the ton. That has climate consequences. If you listen to Ralph Chomley, you hear there's a carbon consequence to taking hundreds of millions of tons of wildlife, carbon-based units out of the ocean, releasing that carbon into the atmosphere and disrupting the natural systems in the ocean, just as when you pull up trees and plant buildings, the mechanisms for capturing and holding carbon and keeping it going through the food web, it's disrupted. Bottom trawling is a terrible means of capturing, but why are we capturing it on that scale, no matter what technique we use? It's one thing to feed your families, your communities, but when you start feeding global markets, there's no end to what is profitable to take from the sea. We have de-wilded the ocean to the extent of half the coral reefs, half the kelp forests, half the seagrass meadows, 90% of the sharks, 90% of many of the things that we like the most to eat, like tunas, swordfish. What are those yum creatures that we have developed a habit in my lifetime, not on anybody's plate, going back, except perhaps a few people who relied on wild animals for sustenance. We've learned to acquire the taste for ocean wildlife, and it runs so deep. And the belief that the ocean is infinite and that we can take without consequences and we can put into the ocean without consequences, that here we are, early in the 21st century, looking at the big X factor. We can measure from the high in the sky what's going on the surface of the earth. That's the land. That's the surface of the ocean. Remember, though, 97% of the biosphere, 97% of the water is ocean, and it's three-dimensional. The average depth is way beyond where satellites can gather information, or where we can measure temperature, or the other factors that we're putting on our great balance sheet, our basis of how do we know what's going on in the Earth. We're just measuring this deep in the ocean. The average depth of the ocean is about 4 kilometers, the maximum 11 kilometers. The Mariana Trench. The Titanic sits at about the average depth of the ocean. I've had the privilege of being in a little submersible at the average depth of the ocean. I've had the privilege, like astronauts who go high in the sky and look back at Earth, and they come back and they really want you to know what Earth looks like from space. I have been using more than 30 different kinds of submarines deep in the ocean. I've lived underwater 10 times. That is, you stay long enough. Not like Jane Goodall, who spends years getting to know one species pretty well, or the octopus teacher who got to know one octopus pretty well over 1 year. But to spend weeks at least to get to know that moray eel who has a face, who has an attitude, or that grouper over there. Oh, I know you. I saw you yesterday, and you were over here, but I recognize you because you're not like any other grouper. Like each of you is unlike any other human being. All individuals. But we treat life in the sea as wildlife by the ton. We've treated birds on the land by the ton until the beginning of the 20th century. We began to think differently about wildlife on the land. One of the big X factors, the big unknowns that haunt me when I look at Johann's planetary boundaries and look at all the evidence. I served as the chief scientist of NOAA. I looked at plenty of evidence about climate change, about El Nino and La Nina and how they affect climate and weather. But here we are with this mindset that it's okay to kill the ocean by the ton. What is it that will take to get to that desired place? Nature positive. I think that's my charge, to come away from this wonderful mind-crunching, number-crunching exercise that we've been experiencing tonight with a real reason for hope. And I certainly have it. Imagine, I suggested to Andre Hoffman tonight, imagine if we didn't know. Imagine if we didn't have what we do have, the best available knowledge. It's going to get better, but we have to put the ocean on the balance sheet or we'll never get to where we need to be. You need to think differently about nature, but remember that the ocean is most of nature, most of it. We've come far on the land. We're protecting about 15%. But if you're honest about how much of the ocean we're protecting, really protecting, it's less than 3%, maybe 2%. That means most of the living world is open for the continuation of the same old thing of exploitation rather than caring. Here's the thing. We need to market. We need to find, capture, and market the truth. Find the truth. Let's explore. Capture the truth. Crunch the numbers. And then market the truth. What a concept. Mm-hmm. Tell stories. You know, is it cool to smoke? That was marketing. It got a lot of people to smoke. Is it cool to care? Maybe we can get people to think differently about the ocean, about other people, about the future, the importance of what we're doing now to create that world that we want. Rio plus 20. What is the world we want? If you have that vision, and everybody takes his or her or their piece of it, individuals, companies, countries, whatever, and say, I can't do what you do, or that you do, but I can do what I can do, and I'm going to do it with this goal in mind. What is the world we want? We may have to make peace with nature. We must do it, because if we don't, nothing else matters. If we don't take care of the ocean, nothing else matters. If we don't take care of the Amazon, just look at the things that are out there to be done. Converting wealth into taking care of the health of the ocean, of the land, of nature, because nature takes care of us. And we have the best chance. According to the numbers, this is our last best chance. We should be the heroes for everyone who follows, those of us in this century, especially this part of this century. You in this room, mobilizing what you've got toward that goal. Oh, collaborating. Of course, nobody can do this alone. But if we get together and move the way, not Darwin, but Lynn Margulis, in the middle of the 20th century, a biologist who pointed out with evidence that we have achieved life on Earth to get to this point where we are today. Through symbiosis, through cooperation, through collaboration. Nature has done this throughout the ages. There is some element of competition, but it's by working together that not only nature has gotten to where we are, she is, but to that place that we want to be by the end of this century and for the next 10,000 years.
Sylvia Earle. I want to be Sylvia Earle. Everybody in this room wants to be Sylvia Earle. Sylvia, thank you very much indeed. What an inspirational 15 minutes we have just spent. Look, Sylvia, thank you. You got a standing ovation from this room, which is still absolutely packed. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you. Thank you so much. What an incredible evening this has been, filled with inspirational speeches, compelling speakers, and a call to action for all of us to help build a safer, more equitable and resilient future. Look, we've heard from those here in the room, united in their determination to realise the opportunity of a nature-positive future. The opportunity before us, as Sylvia rightly pointed out, is immense. To live in harmony with nature, fostering sustainable prosperity and well-being, and embracing the reality that a nature-positive future is a people-positive one. You have my support. Anybody who wants to reach out to me, use me as a platform for the work that you do. I'm here. Just reach out, please. I wish you all the very best. Be careful what I wish for. But really, I found this a very inspiring evening, so thank you for having me back. And I guess we'll see you same time, same place, next year.
I'm looking at Rosalie now, but I think this won't be the last Nature Positive dinner, so we are really looking forward to have you back. But Sylvia, can you come back here? Because Becky, you have put some Herculean effort tonight. Honestly, we make you work so much. And Sylvia, you have been, and as you heard from all of us. So I have something for you as a thank you token. Well, look, no, let me just be super clear. So we are an NGO. So normally we give out extremely symbolic but cheap gifts. So this is the case, but I hope the symbolism will make up for it. And that special thing is a special edition, a nature positive hat. And the book. But you know, I have to say, I'm getting to the point where I'm looking forward to be a granddad soon, I hope. I'm talking to my son a lot, but right now it's not working. But if you can come here, and I can have a picture. In the middle of you wearing the hat. Oh, God. I mean, my grandchildren will be like, Dad, you were magic. Sorry?
Yeah, where's your hat?
I have only two. No. Okay, somebody get a picture? Great. Thank you so much. Becky, Sylvia, all of you, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I love to know.